Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki has expressed concern that he may not get justice from the All Progressive Congress Screening Committee ahead of the primaries for the forthcoming elections in the state. The governor made this feeling known after going through the screening process, even as the University of Ibadan has confirmed that indeed he graduated from the institution in 1979, effectively ending the controversy generated by the authenticity or otherwise of his academic qualification. In other developments regarding the impending election, the All Progressive Congress has decided to use direct primary to produce its party's flag bearer. But a bit of cherry news for the governor came in the form of a comprehensive declaration of support for him by all local government chairmen in Edo State. Tundun, your take on this first.
I just think it's so unfortunate that the governor would come out and say that he may not get justice with the APC screening process. And it does make sense. If we're going to look at the judiciary model, if you are interested, if you're an interested party or related to an interested party, the standard is to recuse yourself. Now, the chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, is not related to an interested party. He is the interested party. He has made it quite clear that there's no love lost between him and his erstwhile political godson. So he really should not be judge, jury, and executioner, as we were discussing yesterday. So it's quite an indictment that the governor feels that he might not get justice. And once again, it will be good to remind APC that if their primaries are found to be flawed, it will be fatal to their ticket, whoever emerges. The ultimate care has to be taken. Now, the University of Ibadan has confirmed that Governor Obaseki did graduate from their institution in 1979, but still, questions are still being raised about his qualifications.
Doctor, why do you need justice at a screening committee of your credentials? Why do you need justice?
Well, you need justice because of the importance of the primaries, because it's through the primaries process that you produce the candidate. And no political party should go into the game for emotional reasons. Political parties get into the game because they want to win power, and you must put your best foot forward. But what we have seen in Edo State is that there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of emotionalism, and in due course, what is happening in the APC in Edo State may become a model again, or a case study for the examination of the menace of godfatherism in Nigeria. Because when you reduce it to the minimum, this is a conflict between the godfather and the godson. The godson who was the favorite in 2016 and who probably was placed above other people. And then in 2020, because the godson did not play ball, he is now a victim and a prodigal son to the godfather. I think that that's a major issue in terms of interpreting the dynamics of Nigeria's process of democratic consolidation. To talk about justice again, I think we need to insist that there should be no predetermined outcome. Because yesterday, Obaseki went for the screening. When he came out of that screening, he said he did not believe that he would get justice. Because at that screening, I assume, Oshiomhole was also involved one way or the other, and he came out maybe based on the pattern of questioning or the attitude that he met, that he will not get justice. Not getting justice means that the party is already determined in a particular direction. He too may be playing politics, but that's what he said. But I think at the end of the day, the leadership of the APC must ensure that there is fair play, that there is justice, back to your word, that every candidate, all the 6 candidates within the APC are given the opportunity, a level playing field. That, I think, is important. And I think all the leaders of the APC in Edo State must also note something, which is the point that has been made by the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission. With any indication of violence in the election in Edo State, INEC will not waste time to just discard the result. And that, of course, will not be in the interest of the political parties. It will not be good for the image of Edo State, and it will not be in the best interest of the people of Edo State. And I think they should take that statement by the INEC chairman very seriously. Finally, it's good, it's big relief that the University of Ibadan came out yesterday and confirmed that indeed Godwin Obaseki attended the University of Ibadan and that he graduated. In fact, online, we also saw, a page of the brochure, the graduation brochure, in which his name appeared. Now, what we see in the game that has gone on so far is our politicians are very desperate people. They will go to any extent to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. The certificate of Godwin Obaseki that is online shows that he graduated from the Department of Classical Studies. I was confused myself as someone who spent, who did postgraduate studies at the University of Ibadan. That department is called Department of Classics. It's not called Department of Classical Studies. So when I saw what was being circulated, I was a bit confused. But the University of Ibadan, the brochure that was put out yesterday, showed that indeed he graduated from the Department of Classics. And as I said yesterday, I insist on the point that I made yesterday, that whoever is behind the attack on Obaseki cannot approbate and reprobate for emotional reasons. And so it's a message for the political leadership in Edo State. And Adams Shomole, as national chairman and as the leader of the party in Edo State, should look at what has happened so far and try to read the tea leaves more carefully.
Very importantly, I mean, it just goes to show the way our politics has been done. To a large extent, it's still about the godfather and the godson, which is not supposed to be the case. Politics is supposed to be a clash of very good ideas to move a nation forward. But like you said rightly, I think it was Adedibu that said that if you want to know the man that dated your mother before she got married to your father, go and do politics. And this has started to rear its ugly head. But
well, I went into politics. Nobody has told me about anybody that dated my mother.
Wait till you become a strong contender.
Adedibu may not be Solomonic. Maybe when I try to run for the presidency of Nigeria, maybe
they will tell you then.
I'm waiting for that person who will tell me.
All right, thank you so much, Jackson, for that. That's all on the headline news. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we have the trio of Rotus, Odiri, Michael Wilson, and Aaron to give us updates on African global and business and COVID-19 report. Stay with us. They will soon tell you, Doctor.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Rotus Odiri is now here to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus. Over to you.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Tundun. Good morning, Rufai. Our main discussion today is on the Nigerian National Broadcasting Commission and their Nigerian Broadcasting Code. They've made some amendments to it with regards to boosting local content and boosting advertising revenue for local content providers. But I have to say that after the private sector broadcasters looked at the provisions in this amendment, some of them are very, very troubling. We start off with national emergencies, and we're going to actually read what it actually says here with respect to national emergencies. This pretty much says that the private commercial broadcasters, as private sector, shall ensure that it allots a minimum of 20% of weekly broadcast hours to public service programs on emergencies, current events, and issues. Such programs shall be given prominence during the family belt and shall not be less than 120 minutes per transmission. That is 2 hours of broadcasting time for a private commercial broadcaster to allocate to public service programs. That's for national emergencies. We then go on to sub-licensing. This is another big one that has really bothered a lot of people. The broadcaster shall comply with directives by the Commission, that's the National Broadcasting Commission, that compel any broadcaster in the broadcast industry to license its broadcast and signal rights in any genre, entertainment, sports, whatever, any genre of programming, to another licensee or broadcaster in Nigeria if the following circumstances are present. We won't read through all the circumstances, just look at the first one. A, if the genre of program enjoys compelling viewership by Nigerians. That's just the first one. Let's move on to acquisition of sporting rights. I was trying to get some help from Aaron. I was talking to him a few minutes ago because I was a bit confused about this. The very first line says that Nigeria shall not be bundled in the same basket with other countries in the sale of football rights. Right, the reason why I was confused is because of what's on the blue, above the blue line, right below that. The final bid for the acquisition of rights to sporting events, which includes football, shall be reasonable in comparison with other territories of similar economic indices, which is usually population, number of people that will be watching. So a little confused there as to why those two, to my view, seem to be in contrast. And then another thing with sports is this is another one that blew a lot of people's minds. This 30% local content. Take a look at what they say here. They said, no prime foreign sports content shall be transmitted in the Nigerian territory unless the owner of such content has also acquired prime local sports content of the same category with a minimum of 30% of the cost of the acquiring of the prime foreign sports content. Let's use an example. News just broke 24 hours ago that Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua are going to agree to a 2-fight deal. This is according to Eddie Hearn, who is a sports promoter. If this fight between Joshua and Tyson Fury, regardless of where it takes place, if it costs $1 billion total for broadcasting rights, the fees, the players' purse, everything, for that to be broadcast in Nigeria, there has to be a minimum 30% of that $1 billion, which is $300 million, invested in a fight of equivalence to the Joshua and Tyson Fury fight, which is, I mean, it's incredible. Jason Njoku, who is the founder of Iroko TV, sent out some tweets, reacting to these measures, and essentially called it nationalizing, saying that what the MBS is doing is nationalizing private content and forcing them to provide it to local content providers, all in the name of creating a level playing field. We're supposed to have the tweets up there for our viewers to be able to see them, but that's essentially what he called it. And if you think about it, the cost of what a private sector broadcaster pays for a writer, a director, all the investment that's being made into exclusive content, you can't now force that private sector player to sub-license or give that content to a local content broadcaster in the name of trying to create a level playing field or in the name of trying to boost content. It's just not done. So there was a headline, I believe, in the Daily saying that Netflix, Sony, other companies that actually provide content in Nigeria might actually think twice of doing that because of this particular measure that's been put forward. So it's particularly okay. There's Jason's tweet there where he says that essentially Nigeria Broadcasting Commission is making exclusivity illegal, compelling sub-licensing of content, and regulating price are effectively turning private investment into state property. Interference distorts markets. If implemented, this 100% destroys pay TV in Nigeria. So, I mean, the morning show is exclusive content of the Arise Media Group. Can you imagine sub-licensing the morning show to a different party in order to say we want to provide competition for local players? So that's essentially what folks have been looking at. It's been trending a lot in the business community on Twitter. Okay, he also adds 2 more tweets there where he also adds he fleshes out his example of what he's talking about with regards to it. He's saying that, but with regards to what it would mean is that these proposed items would make 0 sense, and then he lists a number of private sector players, saying that none of them would want to invest as a result of this, and essentially calls it champagne socialism with 0 input of any innovation. And then this is kind of funny. He says CNN will leave its daily programming to show the arrival of Orji Kalu and APC and PDP conventions, and then this essentially will be ready for NTA everywhere. This is the highest priority of NBC. I mean, that's his opinion, but he's saying that essentially is what part of the national emergencies part, where it says 120 minutes has to be dedicated to public programming. So it's quite troubling.
But that stipulation about national emergencies is only appropriate if it's directed at NTA. You can say that to NTA, not to... If you describe concern as private and commercial broadcasters, then it just follows that you cannot dictate what they will do with their intellectual property.
Right,
it actually doesn't make any sense, right?
It's troubling.
I mean, this is troubling. I think the NBC needs to understand commercialization of media in Nigeria, because obviously from this document, you'll see that there is no impute about commercialization. And I wonder the stakeholders that sat down to put this document together. Exactly. I wonder if the likes of them, Jason Njoku, were there, if the likes of Netflix and some other, people that really buy content, and I'll give you an instance of Netflix. You say, let's disperse content. Netflix has spent close to $500,000 to $1 million to buy a Nigerian content or lesser than that. So you want that same Netflix to take the money they have spent on that content without recouping that money and spreading the content very easily. I'll give you a film, for instance. The popular trending film now, Living in Bondage, that just got on Netflix. Right. How can you imagine just sharing Living in Bondage just like that for everybody?
Exactly. In the name of it. So there's a lack of innovation. Lack of innovation. If you want to boost local content, then local content providers have to invest the money, as Rufai you've just said, like a Netflix or any other content provider, in writers, directors, and so on, to improve the content. You can't, legislate that foreign provider or private providers now, give that over to them just like that. Let them also create. And this is when you think about what's needed in order to boost other sectors of the Nigerian economy, we need ideas that are supposed to do that.
Rotus, as a man who has played in this space for 35 years, I'd like to just make a few comments. I think that this is a gag order. It's an indication of censorship. The relationship between the Nigerian government and the media has always been adversarial. But this looks like an indication that the situation could get worse. Now, a meeting was held in March with a group called the FIMI Group by the Minister of Information and also some stakeholders. Now, that stakeholder community was not inclusive enough, and I do not know what they agreed to. Now, in the first place, this particular new order, what we were told in March was that the Ministry of Information, the executive arm of government, was going to submit a bill to the National Assembly to look at it. Now, have they done that? I don't think they have done that. Can they unilaterally violate certain provisions of the NBC Act? And my fear is that we may be going the way of Tanzania, where media repression is in place. Now, one of the things that is said is that they want to abolish monopoly within the media space and also allow for competition. But how? Some of those provisions say, for example, that the producer of any content in Nigeria must be a Nigerian. Now, who says that Nigerians cannot own channels like Arise News that is international? Right. That can recruit people from any part of the world. Now, there's also a provision about coverage, about the kind of material that you can use, about content. And they say, look, media houses in Nigeria must take responsibility for content taken from citizen journalism platforms. Now, is the Nigerian government now saying that it will dictate the content that media providers give out there? So I think that, we need to take a second look at this proposed new code and, have a conversation around it. However, one or two points that they made, one about copyright, about paying musicians for using their material, I do not have a problem with that. Right. But for the most part, this proposed new code is draconian. And we have seen in the last 3-4 years, the NBC behaving like an enforcement arm of a government, not as a reasonable regulatory agency, but as an agency that seeks to muzzle the media. And we all must be reminded that the freedom of expression is important, promoting private business is important. Yep.
Yes, indeed. Capitalism.
Thank you, Reuben.
Thank you, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rotus. All right, we'll move on to Michael Wilson from London now. Michael, if you can hear us.
Very good morning to you. Yes, I can. All right, globally, a pretty downbeat day, actually, yesterday. Adding to the headwinds, the fact that the OECD, which we reported yesterday, saying the global economy will suffer the biggest downturn in peacetime history in a century before actually things start to get right. So here are the headwinds then. The Fed, first of all. Now, this was important. It kept interest rates exactly where everybody thought they would be. In other words, it didn't change them. But the importance of this was that this was the first time that we got a view from America's central bank about what they felt the damage to the economy from the COVID-19 pandemic had actually been. So Jerome Jay Powell said, the chairman of the Fed, said that interest rates will be kept low until at least 2022. Now, that's quite a thing to say. I mean, this isn't to say that these things won't change, but to say that interest rates will be that low for that amount of time, in other words...
Michael, we'll go on a quick break. We'll come back to you very soon. Quickly, thank you so much. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. Still the morning show right here on the Rise News channel. We'll just quickly go back to Michael Wilson in London. Michael?
Thanks so much indeed. Yes, so I was talking just before the break about the Fed, and the importance of that meeting was, this is the Central Bank of the United States, the importance of the meeting, this is the first view, really, the official view of what damage the pandemic has done to the United States, which is arguably the largest economy in the world. By the end of 2020, the chairman of the Fed said they reckon the unemployment rate will be 9.3%. It's worth remembering that the pre-pandemic unemployment rate in the United States was 3.5%. It will be 5.5% in 2022, 4.1% in 2023. So you remember on Friday we saw those jobs figures coming out of the United States, and they added to what the OECD was saying. But those jobs figures were supposed to be quite good. I was saying at the time that actually long-term unemployment is going to be one of the real problems with this. And clearly, as the United States is not only struggling economically, but also struggling socially, I think this pandemic will be an absolutely pivotal event in the history of the United States, if not in the world itself. Asian stocks falling yesterday, completely in the red. Nikkei 225 down 2%, as you'd expect here, a lower start as well. US dollar in the firing line, again, as you would expect. Gold traded at a level. Now, again, this is one of these safe haven assets, isn't it, where people go when they're worried. A bit of uncertainty there, but still gold gained slightly, as did precious metals and as did copper. Now, again, I keep going on about copper most days, actually. It's hit a high. I think that's more in anticipation of that price rising and the demand actually coming from that. We talked about the OECD and the shrinking. The global economy could shrink by 6% this year. The contraction could be 7.2% if there's a second wave of COVID-19. And on Monday, if you remember, the World Bank said the world economy would shrink by 5.2% this year. Now, these are just percentages, but you see what's happening. We're getting a worse picture as we go on, and these are considerable headwinds. Oil had a fairly volatile session yesterday. There was the inventory report from the United States. Stockpiles grew by 8.4 million barrels. The EIA update revealed that oil and gasoline inventories rose slightly. We're also hearing, here's one for you, might want to follow this up. I'm hearing this from the oil market this morning, that Nigeria is having problems repairing its pipelines because engineers are working at hospitals. That's the gossip, as it were, the mutter that's going around the oil market this morning. 1:30 today, we get the weekly US jobless claims. The level is tipped to be 1.55 million. Remember, last week it was 1.87 million. So it's that's a trajectory. The nosedive, if you like, is flattening very, very slightly. There's going to be couple of final things. The Eurogroup meeting today, which will discuss that plan I was talking about last week to give 500 billion euro to companies which have been countries have been affected by the pandemic. But
thank you, Mr. Wilson. I'm afraid we've got to move on now.
They should be loans rather than grants.
Thank you for your update this morning. And now for an update on COVID-19 pandemic, Aaron Akirejada. Good morning, Aaron.
Hey, good morning, Tundun. It's good to hear from you this morning. And good morning to Rufais. Good morning to Doctor. Yeah, before I get in.
Aaron, just go straight ahead.
Okay.
Go straight ahead.
I heard Rufais serenading Tundun this morning.
Aaron, go straight ahead. Aaron, go straight ahead.
Let's get straight into the issue today. And let's actually
confirm.
Yes.
You guys prevented a battle of the suitors.
Yes.
Okay. No problem.
We don't have too much time, Aaron. Just go ahead.
The update, please.
Okay, straight into the update this morning. Yesterday, it was confirmed that the number of affected patients of COVID-19 in the U.S. had actually crossed the 2 million mark. Right, the numerical figures are out well over 2 million, and this was from the latest data that are actually coming in. And at the moment, the U.S. is the most affected, all right, or most affected country worldwide in terms of COVID-19 at the moment. Without a doubt, well over 115,000 deaths have been recorded in the U.S. And as it stands right now, things don't even seem to slow down, because just yesterday, after this report actually came out, and these figures were actually shown by and confirmed by the Johns Hopkins University, all right, the head of Harvard Global Health Institute told the CNN, talking about Ashish Jai, that by September, they're expecting this number, the number of deaths in the U.S., to spike till about 200,000. And that's quite worrisome for those in the U.S., understanding that at the moment, there are still protests in several cities in the U.S., and we're still seeing numbers actually spike and spiral out of control, literally. And we are hoping they can get their hands on it. But that hasn't stopped some things from going on in the capital, of course, Washington, D.C. All right, President Donald Trump has actually announced that he will begin his campaign trail once again. He will be hitting a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma next week, Friday. And these figures have not in any way tried to slow him or deter him from actually doing that. This will be his first since the COVID-19 was actually reported. So you look at that and you kind of cringe by the numbers we are seeing come out from the U.S. Looking at the world figures, it's clear that with well over 7,360,239 cases in the world, the U.S. still takes a chunk of it. Now, over 2 million of those 7 million is from the United States of America alone. And I'm moving away from that. Our neighbors to the United States, of course, turning our attention to the Latin Americas and South America, to be very precise. We are now seeing worrying signs also, because in Mexico, we also, in the entire Latin Africa, we've heard that, or the reports right now have it that 70,000 deaths have been recorded in the entirety of Latin America, of which Mexico has 15,357 of those particular numbers, as against when you look at also Brazil, which also has quite a lot from there. You can actually see over 39,797 in number of deaths. So you look at all that, and things are still not looking good in Latin America. As a matter of fact, there's a squabble happening in Mexico, which is between, like we've seen in the United States, where governors are trying to superimpose their power and their supremacy over the president. Of course, Manuel Obrador, I beg your pardon, the president of Mexico, has said that mass testing is a waste of time in Mexico. But the Mexico City mayor has actually said that's not the case. That from July, they will begin mass testing, and they're hoping to test well over 100 people in the Mexico City alone. And they'll continue doing that till they can get this virus under control. So things are really spiraling out of control. Let me get to you. Let me get to hear from you before we get into African figures, because African figures also are not looking good this morning.
Well, Aaron, you are absolutely correct. If I may borrow... you cannot be more correct, to borrow Professor Akintenewa's favorite phrase. Now, the issue is that in countries all over the world where we have seen the easing of the lockdown, the numbers have gone up. In India, in Iran, in virtually every country of the world. And that perhaps is something that political leaders who make the policies need to worry about. In the United States, as you pointed out, the number is stubbornly high. As of yesterday, we were told 20 states were the most affected states. But as of this morning, the number has increased to 22 states. And, you know, yesterday I mentioned California and Arizona. Now, as of this moment, you have Texas and also Arkansas reporting very high figures. So that's the situation in the United States. The excuse that is given officially is that mass testing has increased. But that is not the truth. What we have seen in Iran, India, South Africa, and in other places is that, look, after the easing of the lockdown, there has been an increase in community spreading. Look at France, where, you know, there's also been an easing of the lockdown. Yes, death rates may have slowed down in France, but infection rates have also gone up. And I hope that there are lessons that the political leadership can learn from this. Look at Democratic Republic of Congo. The Nobel Prize winner, Mukwege, he had to withdraw from the task force because he thought that the country was not being serious enough. And I think that more people should begin to speak up about the strategy that is being applied in their various countries.
I mean, very well said, Doctor. Like I say, you're very, very spot on. I think it was yesterday Dr. Anthony Fauci came out to say that let's not think that the end is near for coronavirus.
Yeah.
Because it looks as though leadership is dropping the ball, and everybody's dropping the ball because there's no sense of leadership. The level of fear for coronavirus has decreased. A clear case, like you talked about, is Mexico, where the president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has not shown leadership as regards coronavirus because of politicking. Another clear case is Burundi. See what happened. In the thick of coronavirus, Burundi went ahead to have an election. The president finally died, Pierre Nkurunziza, in Burundi. So leadership has to be upheld in all of this, and the end is not yet. We've not even started a second wave yet, and probably we might even have a third wave as this goes on, because when you look at the 1918 Spanish influenza, there's always a second and probably a third wave. And the second wave in 1918 started when the first lockdown opened.
All right, before we actually go, let's actually turn our attention to Africa, because we're also monitoring the numbers. And at the moment in Africa, 209,438 is the number of confirmed cases in Africa. So we've passed the 200,000 mark. And when you look at that, put it side by side with other continents in the world, looking at Latin America, looking at the United States, looking at Asia, these actually pales in comparison to that. But that's still, people are still saying, the experts out there are still saying that since there are no massive tests being done, so this might just be underreported, as a matter of fact, or this doesn't really show the true nature or the true situation on ground. But nevertheless, this is what we have as of today. And Southern Africa, Malawi, all right, Lesotho, and some of those places, we are seeing numbers steadily going up. Without a doubt, South Africa still has the highest number. Well over 55,000 cases have been reported in South Africa, and people have actually liken that to the fact that South Africa are almost getting to the million mark in terms of testing. So certainly, if you test well over 1 million people, you would find a considerable number. But without a doubt, South Africa is actually rising and rising.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Clearly, South Africa accounts for about 2/3 of the cases in Africa, which is already close to 600,000.